There comes a moment in history when silence becomes betrayal, and this is that moment. Right now, as you breathe, as you scroll, as the world sleeps, U.S. warplanes are in position, satellites are locked in, and somewhere deep behind closed doors, decisions are being made that could drag the entire world into fire. This is not a drill, this is not a theory, this is the fuse being lit, and no one is talking about it. But tonight we will. Not just about bombs and borders, but about truth. The kind of truth that shatters lies, tears through propaganda, and exposes the painful reality the Muslim world keeps running from, because what's coming is not just war. It's a test of our unity, our faith, and our spine. And if you think this is just about Iran, you're already playing the wrong game. Stay with me. Don't look away, because once you hear what you're about to hear, you won't be able to unhear it. The recent deployment of U.S. warplanes near Iran isn't just another military maneuver. It's a calculated display of force that carries decades of tension behind it. These aren't planes on a training mission, and this isn't business as usual. This is signaling. This is pressure with a shadow of firepower. When the U.S. moves its most advanced fighter jets and strategic bombers into position, it's not just for defense, it's to send a message. We're ready. And that readiness isn't just military, it's psychological. It's meant to rattle nerves, stir fear, and provoke a response. Iran sees it, the world sees it, and whether the trigger is pulled or not, the intention is clear. Confrontation is not off the table. But this didn't come out of nowhere. The buildup is a chapter in a long story where diplomacy is weaponized and peace is negotiated through muscle. Every aircraft in the sky represents not just technology, but a history of dominance. The West has mastered the art of intimidating nations into compliance. When negotiations fail, engines roar. And this moment, this military posture isn't just for Iran. It's a message to every other country watching. If you resist, if you rise, this is what awaits you. Now, there's a difference between readiness and recklessness. But when warplanes are fueled, armed, and waiting within striking distance, the line between defense and aggression gets thin. In history, wars have begun not with invasions, but with deployments like this. Chess moves disguised as protection. And when you look at the Middle East, the pattern is undeniable. Iraq was a threat. Libya was unstable. Syria was out of control. And now Iran is provocative. It's always the same playbook, just with different headlines. What makes this moment dangerous is not just the military positioning, it's the unpredictability of response. One wrong signal, one misread maneuver, and skies filled with jets can become skies filled with fire. This kind of pressure isn't neutral. It pushes people. It corners nations. And when a proud country like Iran is pushed into a corner, it doesn't kneel, it fights. That's where the risk lies. Not in intention, but in miscalculation. The warplanes may not drop bombs today, but their presence has already shaken the ground. It's a message written not in words, but in wings and metal. And the world is holding its breath, because what starts as readiness can, in one moment, become reality. The mainstream media today doesn't just report on conflict, it manufactures the lens through which we see it. The headlines talk about defensive moves, strategic deterrence, and maintaining stability. But behind those polished phrases is a machine that carefully molds public perception. The deployment of warplanes near Iran is being portrayed as necessary, even responsible, when in reality it's a familiar pattern, the same pattern we've seen before in Iraq, Libya, Syria, and Afghanistan. It always starts with a justification. The enemy is demonized. The threat is exaggerated. And by the time the first bomb drops, the people have already been convinced that war is the only option. That's not defense. It's narrative warfare. Muslims around the world need to understand this painful truth. The first battlefield is always the mind. Before a missile is launched, the media launches a message, and it's often one designed to strip Muslims of empathy for one another. Iran is labeled extreme, dangerous, unpredictable. That framing doesn't just justify aggression. It isolates Iran from the global Muslim community. It turns what should be unity into silent complicity, because when the media floods the world with fear, people stop asking questions. They stop searching for truth. And when truth disappears, anything can be justified. Even a war that serves no one but the powerful. This cycle isn't new, it's repeated history. Iraq was invaded based on lies about weapons. Libya was destroyed under the banner of democracy. Syria became a playground for foreign interests while its people bled, and now the focus is on Iran. The playbook doesn't change because it doesn't have to, because the world keeps falling for the same story over and over. But this time, there's no excuse for blindness. We've seen the cost. We've watched entire nations reduced to rubble. We've seen the children, the refugees, the broken dreams scattered across continents. And if we're still letting headlines tell us who to fear and who to blame, then we're not just victims. We're participants in our own downfall. When media spins conflict into protection, when moms are wrapped in language like peacekeeping, and when independence, resistance, and truth are enemies to control, and look at that, and resistance and truth are enemies to the system. It's fought not remain quiet, because if we do, then the warplanes in the independence, resistance, and truth are enemies. The keys to resistance and truth are enemies. To try and be responsible. And if we don't speak now, the next target could be any of us. Iran has become more than just a country in the crosshairs of Western power. It has become a symbol of resistance, of refusal to bend, of standing firm even when surrounded. And for that very reason, it has also become a target. For decades, the West has made it clear, any Muslim nation that dares to chart its own course outside the approved script, any government that rejects the economic chains and foreign control, any people who speak with defiance instead of submission will face the full weight of global power. Iran, through years of sanctions, isolation, military threats, and sabotage, has still not collapsed. That reality is uncomfortable for those who expected it to break. It's not just Iran's actions that have made it a threat in the eyes of global powers. It's what Iran represents to the rest of the Muslim world. When a nation like Iran stands its ground, it sends a silent message to others. You don't have to kneel to survive. You don't have to sell your principles to be respected. That kind of example is dangerous to systems built on obedience. The truth is, many Muslim-majority countries have been pressured into compromise, into silence, into compliance, for fear of punishment. Iran's refusal to accept that mold breaks the narrative that submission is the only option. That's why it's targeted not just militarily, but in the media, in politics and public perception. It must be painted as irrational, extreme, dangerous, because if it's ever seen as principled or strategic, then the illusion that resistance is futile begins to crumble. Iran's continued survival and defiance challenge a world order that thrives on control. It reminds oppressed people that power isn't always in the hands of the loudest or the wealthiest. It's in conviction, in unity, and in standing for something greater than fear. But make no mistake, that kind of strength invites enemies. Not because of what Iran has done, but because of what it continues to represent. A Muslim nation that refuses to be dictated to, refuses to hand over its future, refuses to forget its history. That's a threat to the powerful, because it sets a dangerous precedent for others to follow. Iran may have its flaws, its political complexities, its share of internal challenges, but on the global stage, its defiance speaks louder than its mistakes. And that voice is exactly what many fear the most, because in that voice, others might find their own. The silence of powerful Muslim nations in the face of rising tension between Iran and the West speaks louder than any speech, any press release, or any diplomatic statement. It is a silence soaked in fear, in political calculation, and worst of all, in betrayal. For decades, the Muslim Ummah has been fractured not by outside forces alone, but by the quiet surrender of those with wealth, influence, and seats at international tables. When a fellow Muslim nation like Iran stands on the edge of confrontation, when warplanes circle the skies and threats grow louder, the response from many Muslim capitals is nothing but silence. No outrage, no unity, no protective voice raised on the global stage, just a cold, strategic quiet that speaks volumes about where true alliances lie. This silence isn't accidental. It's deliberate. It comes from a long-standing habit of playing both sides, of shaking hands with oppressors behind closed doors while offering shallow support in front of cameras. It's rooted in self-preservation, in fear of economic consequences, in the desire to maintain Western approval at the expense of Muslim dignity. And every time this silence repeats itself, it costs the Ummah more than just reputation. It costs it respect, trust, and strength. Because when one Muslim nation is targeted and the others pretend not to see, the entire community loses its voice. The West watches this silence and takes it as a green light. It sees the lack of unity and knows it can press forward without resistance. But the people see it too. The ordinary Muslims watching from their homes, scrolling through headlines, feeling helpless, frustrated, and betrayed, they see who speaks and who stays quiet. And they are waking up to the reality that leadership without courage is not leadership at all. The Muslim world doesn't lack power, it lacks purpose. It doesn't lack wealth, it lacks will. While Iran stands defiant, it stands alone. And that loneliness is not a reflection of its strength, but of the failure of others to rise with it. True unity isn't tested in peace. It's tested in pressure. And right now, too many leaders are failing that test. Their silence is not neutrality, it's abandonment. And history will not forget it. Because when the dust settles, when the world writes the story of this era, it will remember not only who attacked, but also who turned away. And that shame, once written, is not so easy to erase. If war breaks out between the United States and Iran, it won't stay confined to missiles and borders. It will ripple across the entire Muslim world like a shockwave. Iran may be the focal point, the one in the crosshairs, but what's truly at stake is much bigger than one nation. The first bombs won't just hit cities, they'll hit economies, alliances, the already fragile sense of unity in the Ummah, and the hope of rising Muslim influence on the global stage. Every time Muslim countries destabilize under the banner of justice or democracy or counterterrorism, the long-term result has been fragmentation. Iraq was torn apart and is still rebuilding. Libya collapsed into chaos. Syria bled and burned while the world looked away. If Iran becomes the next battleground, it won't be an isolated event. It will be another chapter in the systematic dismantling of Muslim power. This isn't about defending every policy or decision Iran has made. It's about understanding that the consequences of conflict stretch far beyond the battlefield. Iran holds significant influence across the region, politically, culturally, and strategically. It is a major player in shaping resistance, balance, and identity in the Muslim world. If that influence is neutralized through war, what rises in its place won't be unity. It will be vacuum. And vacuums in the Middle East have always been filled by either foreign occupation or extremist reaction. Neither brings peace. Neither brings progress. And both are exactly what the enemies of the Ummah desire. Endless division. The potential war is also a trap, provocation meant to push Iran into a reactive state. A war would give Western powers another excuse to dominate narratives, control resources, and redraw maps to their advantage. It would give them a justification to step further into the region under the guise of protection, and it would scatter focus across the Muslim world, turning attention away from growing movements of justice and independence. Iran's strength, whether agreed with or not, represents a kind of spiritual defiance, a refusal to be bullied. And if that is crushed, it sends a message to every other Muslim majority nation. Stand tall and you'll be struck down. The truth is painful, but it must be faced. This isn't just about Iran. If war comes, it will hit the soul of the Muslim world. It will set fire not just to cities, but to the hope that one day the Ummah might rise again in unity, in strength, and in dignity. And if that fire is allowed to burn, it may take generations to recover what is lost. This moment in history demands more than passive observation. It demands clarity, courage, and awakening for Muslims around the world. What's unfolding between the United States and Iran is not just about politics or territory. It's about perception, power, and the direction of the global Muslim identity. Iran's refusal to bow to Western terms, its resilience in the face of pressure, and its unapologetic stance are shaking the foundations of how Muslim strength is perceived, not just by the world, but by Muslims themselves. For far too long, the Ummah has been told that survival comes through submission, that progress requires silence, and that dignity must be traded for security. But in this defining moment, that illusion is cracking, and the truth is emerging with brutal clarity. The world has changed. Power is no longer held only by tanks and treaties. It's held in narratives, in courage, in the willingness to say no when everyone else says yes. Iran is doing exactly that, and whether people agree with his politics or not, its defiance is waking something in the hearts of Muslims globally. That's why this moment is so dangerous for those who benefit from division and obedience. If Muslims start to see strength in resistance instead of compliance, the balance of global influence begins to shift. If Muslims begin to think critically about the stories they're told, to question who benefits from every conflict, and to ask what unity truly looks like, the world changes. But awakening is not easy. It comes with pain. It comes with responsibility. It comes with the realization that silence is no longer an option and ignorance is no longer an excuse. What's at stake isn't just one country or one crisis. It's the future direction of the Ummah. Will it continue to be splintered, managed, and used as a pawn in global games? Or will it rise, not through violence or chaos, but through awareness, truth, and strategic strength? That choice doesn't lie in the hands of leaders alone. It lies in the hearts of everyday Muslims, in what they believe, in what they choose to support, in whether they choose to wake up or stay asleep. Because what's coming next isn't just a clash of armies, it's a clash of narratives. A battle between those who want Muslims to remain broken and those who are ready to see the Ummah whole again. The lines are being drawn not just on maps, but in minds. And the painful truth is, if we don't choose clarity now, we may not have the chance to choose it later. This isn't just about warplanes in the sky or a possible strike on Iran. It's about something much deeper, a battle for the dignity, unity, and future of the Muslim world. The silence of powerful Muslim leaders, the manipulation of media narratives, and the ever-tightening grip of global powers have pushed the Ummah to a dangerous edge. But from that edge, a choice must be made. Remain asleep and let history repeat itself, or rise with clarity and courage to shape a different future. Iran's defiance may be flawed, but it's a mirror reflecting the fearlessness that has been missing for far too long. This is not the time to argue over borders or politics. This is the time to recognize the pattern, see through the lies, and stand together before it's too late. Because the bombs may fall in one place, but the damage, the spiritual, emotional, and global damage will be shared by all. Thank you for having the courage to listen, to reflect, and to question what the world wants you to believe. If this message awakens something inside you, hold on to it, share it, speak about it, because truth only survives when it's passed forward. Stay strong, stay aware, and remember, silence is no longer an option. May Allah protect the oppressed, awaken the sleeping, and unite the broken hearts of this Ummah. Good luck on your journey toward truth, and thank you for walking this path with us.